There was a lot of dialogue, and I did it in my first take, so I was very proud of that.
The evening sun filtered softly through the lace curtains of a modest Memphis apartment. Dust motes floated lazily in the golden light, drifting above an old upright piano whose varnish had long since faded. The keys, yellowed by time, held a quiet dignity, the kind that only comes with years of music, love, and memory. Seated at the piano was Evelyn Margaret Thompson, 97 years old. Her back was slightly hunched, and her fingers, gnarled from age and arthritis, trembled ever so slightly as they hovered over the keys. But when she began to play, a quiet magic unfolded. Each note, slow and deliberate, seemed to shimmer in the air like an echo from another time. This was not a performance. There was no audience, no camera crew, no fanfare. Just a woman, a piano, and a melody that had been living in her heart for decades. To the outside world, Evelyn was just another elderly woman, a relic of a fading generation. But within her, there was still a flame. Small, maybe, fragile, yes, but undeniably burning. For the past 6 months, Evelyn had been working on something that most people would have considered improbable, even impossible, at her age. She was writing a song, not just any song, but a song meant for one person, Elvis Presley. Yes, that Elvis, the king. You might ask, why? Why would a woman nearing the century mark be composing music for a man who, by all accounts, belonged to a different world, a different time? What connection could she possibly have to him that would drive her to spend her final years hunched over a piano, scribbling lyrics and shaping melodies? Well, that's the part most people never saw, because what Evelyn carried with her wasn't just admiration, it was a kind of sacred bond. A musical thread that had stitched itself through the decades of her life, tying her most personal memories, joy, loss, hope, to the voice of a man she never met. But today, as the Memphis sun rose higher in the sky, Evelyn's mind wasn't on the past. It was on the song. A song she wasn't just writing for Elvis, but with the quiet, impossible hope that somehow, he might one day hear it, and maybe, just maybe, sing it back to her. Evelyn Thompson first heard the name Elvis Presley in 1956. She was 28 at the time, a young school teacher living just outside Jackson, Tennessee. The world was changing. The war was over. The economy was humming, and the radio had become a kind of oracle, crackling with voices that carried dreams from one corner of the country to the other. One Saturday afternoon, she was walking past a record store when something made her stop. A voice, rich and raw, pouring through the speakers like it had nowhere else to go but straight to the heart. It was Heartbreak Hotel. And in that moment, Evelyn didn't just hear music. She felt something shift inside her. She didn't know it then, but that voice would become the thread that would help hold her together through decades to come. Music had always been Evelyn's refuge. As a child of the Great Depression, she learned to find joy in the little things, humming lullabies with her mother, tapping out rhythms on the kitchen table. During World War II, when her husband James was overseas, music was the only thing that made the silence bearable. And when she lost him in a car accident in 1958, it was a vinyl record, Can't Help Falling in Love, that played softly in the background as she sat in the dark, trying to remember how to breathe. Elvis's voice became more than comfort. It became presence, a reassurance. He sang of heartbreak and glory, of rebellion and reverence, of passion and peace. His songs marked the turning points of her life, the good and the painful alike. She saw him live 3 times, in Memphis in '57, Las Vegas in '70, and once more in '76. Each time she was struck not just by the music, but by him. The way he gave himself away on stage. Not just a performer, but a conduit for something bigger. She never called herself a fan. That word felt too small. Elvis, to her, was a kind of echo, a familiar voice that kept showing up, decade after decade, like a friend who knew how to speak when words failed. So when Evelyn sat down to write a song for Elvis at age 97, it wasn't a tribute. It was a thank you letter, written in melody. Because while the rest of the world remembered him as a legend, she remembered him as the voice that helped her survive. The song came to her slowly, not in a flash of inspiration, but in pieces, like memories drifting in on the wind. Evelyn called it Still Dreaming. She never intended it to be grand. It wasn't a soaring ballad or a flashy anthem. It was simple, quiet, a melody built to cradle a voice, not compete with it. And in the lyrics, she poured the only thing she had in abundance: time. Time lived, time lost, time remembered. Each day she sat at the piano, her fingers stiff with arthritis, coaxing out chords with the patience of someone who had nothing to prove, only something to say. The verses carried the weight of 97 years. I've seen nearly 100 years go by, watched dreams rise up and dreams say goodbye. But the music in my heart still plays the same as the day I heard you sing my name. And then the chorus, the heart of it all. Still dreaming, still believing that music heals what words cannot say. Still dreaming, still believing tomorrow's just a song away. This wasn't just a message to Elvis. It was a message to anyone who had ever wondered if they were too old to matter, too late to start, too far gone to create. Evelyn was proof that the soul doesn't age, it just deepens. Her voice, though weathered, still carried surprising strength when she sang softly into her old tape recorder, laying down draft after draft of the song she hoped might one day reach the man who unknowingly shaped her life. She didn't expect anything, but she dreamed. And for Evelyn, dreaming wasn't some fanciful escape. It was an act of quiet rebellion, a statement, a refusal to let age define what she could give. And somewhere, deep down, she believed that if this song found the right ears, it might still have a chance to live. The song came to her slowly, not in a flash of inspiration, but in pieces, like memories drifting in on the wind. Evelyn called it Still Dreaming. She never intended it to be grand. It wasn't a soaring ballad or a flashy anthem. It was simple, quiet, a melody built to cradle a voice, not compete with it. And in the lyrics, she poured the only thing she had in abundance: time. Time lived, time lost, time remembered. Each day she sat at the piano, her fingers stiff with arthritis, coaxing out chords with the patience of someone who had nothing to prove, only something to say. The verses carried the weight of 97 years. I've seen nearly 100 years go by, watched dreams rise up and dreams say goodbye. But the music in my heart still plays the same as the day I heard you sing my name. And then the chorus, the heart of it all. Still dreaming, still believing that music heals what words cannot say. Still dreaming, still believing tomorrow's just a song away. This wasn't just a message to Elvis. It was a message to anyone who had ever wondered if they were too old to matter, too late to start, too far gone to create. Evelyn was proof that the soul doesn't age, it just deepens. Her voice, though weathered, still carried surprising strength when she sang softly into her old tape recorder, laying down draft after draft of the song she hoped might one day reach the man who unknowingly shaped her life. She didn't expect anything, but she dreamed. And for Evelyn, dreaming wasn't some fanciful escape. It was an act of quiet rebellion, a statement, a refusal to let age define what she could give. And somewhere, deep down, she believed that if this song found the right ears, it might still have a chance to live. The call came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Evelyn was in the kitchen peeling apples for a cobbler. When the phone rang, the old rotary one mounted on the wall, its ringer sharp and sudden. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and answered with her usual calm, "Hello, Thompson residence." A man's voice responded, polite but urgent. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Joe Esposito. I work with Mr. Elvis Presley." Evelyn leaned slightly against the counter, her hand gripping the receiver a little tighter. "Yes, I'm listening." "I wanted to let you know," Joe continued, "that Elvis received your song, Still Dreaming, and he was deeply moved. He's been playing it over and over for the past few days. He asked me to call you personally." There was a pause, not out of disbelief, but reverence. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her like a hymn. "Mrs. Thompson," Joe added, his voice softening, "Elvis would like to meet you. He's performing at the Mid-South Coliseum next week. He wants you to be his special guest, and he'd like to perform your song live, dedicated to you." Silence. Not because Evelyn didn't believe it, but because, somewhere inside, she always had. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "Please tell Mr. Presley that his music has been a gift to me for decades. If my little song gave him even a sliver of that joy back, then I'm honored." But Joe wasn't finished. "He wants to sing it for you, Mrs. Thompson, in person, in front of 12,000 people." At that, Evelyn's breath caught, not from nerves, from grace. By the time Sarah arrived home that evening, she found her grandmother at the piano, playing Still Dreaming, with a joy so full and raw it barely fit inside the room. The impossible had happened. The dream had answered back, and everything from that moment forward would never be the same. The Mid-South Coliseum buzzed with electricity. Stagehands hurried across corridors, crew members adjusted lighting rigs, and the muffled sound of a crowd, 12,000 strong, pulsed through the walls. But in a quiet dressing room tucked backstage, the world seemed to slow. Elvis Presley stood by a full-length mirror, straightening the collar of his iconic white jumpsuit. His reflection stared back with tired eyes, eyes that had seen fame's heights and loneliness's depths. This wasn't the energetic young man who had shaken the world in the 50s. This was someone older, wearier, but still searching. There was a knock. One of his aides opened the door and said gently, "She's here." Evelyn entered slowly, her small frame wrapped in a pale blue shawl, her steps deliberate but steady. The room seemed to pause as she and Elvis locked eyes. She looked up at him with a warmth that had nothing to do with celebrity and everything to do with humanity. "Elvis," she said softly, "you're taller than I imagined." He chuckled, stepping forward and taking both her hands in his. "And you're more powerful than I imagined." They sat. No cameras, no entourage, Just two people connected by a song and a lifetime of invisible threads. "I've been listening to your recording all week," he said. "It reminded me of who I used to be, who I still want to be." Evelyn smiled gently. Then the song did what it was meant to. There was a moment of silence before she added, "I've watched you give yourself to audiences for 20 years, Elvis. Tonight, I want you to do something different." He looked at her, curious. "When you sing," she said, "don't just give love. Let yourself receive it. From them. From me, that's what keeps music alive. Not just pouring out, but letting it back in." He was quiet, visibly moved. "You're the first person in a long time," he whispered, "who didn't ask anything from me." Evelyn touched his arm. "I already got what I needed," she said. "You showed up." And in that dressing room, away from the glitter and noise, a 42-year-old icon and a 97-year-old dreamer found something rare: stillness, truth, and the quiet harmony between two souls who knew what it meant to keep dreaming. The arena lights dimmed. The crowd roared. From the first step he took onto the stage, it was clear. Elvis was different tonight. Not in costume, not in voice, but in presence. There was a lightness in him, as if something buried had been stirred back to life. He opened with a few classics: Suspicious Minds, Love Me Tender, and the crowd swayed, sang, cheered. But about halfway through, Elvis stepped up to the microphone and the room quieted with reverence. "I want to share something special with you tonight," he said, his voice calm but charged with emotion. "A few weeks ago, I received a song written by a remarkable woman. She's 97 years old, and she's here with us tonight." He pointed gently to the front row, where Evelyn sat bathed in a soft spotlight. The crowd erupted in applause, not polite, but thunderous. People stood, clapped, even wiped away tears. Evelyn, beaming but humble, placed a hand over her heart. Elvis continued. "She wrote a song called Still Dreaming, and let me tell you, it reminded me why I ever stepped on a stage in the first place." He moved to the grand piano now centered under the stage lights. The audience hushed. A collective breath held, and then he began to play. The first chords rang out soft and slow. His voice entered, not as a performer, but as a man bearing his soul, still dreaming, still believing that music heals what words cannot say. The lyrics settled over the crowd like a blessing. When he reached the second verse, the lines about fame, about the weight of watching eyes, his voice trembled. He looked directly at Evelyn, and for a moment it felt like the 12,000 people in that arena were simply witnesses to something deeply personal. As the final note faded, silence lingered, and then a wave. Applause thundered, echoing off the walls. Tears flowed freely in the crowd. But Elvis wasn't finished. He stood, walked to the edge of the stage, and reached down. With Sarah's help, Evelyn rose and was lifted up to stand beside him. Together, they held hands under the spotlight. A king, a grandmother, and one song that said everything they didn't have to.